Colombia's President Juan Manuel Santos, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to end the conflicts with FARC rebels, now says the government will begin talks with the country's second biggest rebel group, the National Liberation Army. Negotiations are set to start on October 27th in Ecuador. Santos says the group must first release all its hostages.
In order for this to go ahead, it was fundamental that the process of freeing hostages began, so that there's no more kidnappings by the ELN ever again in Colombia. Just today, a hostage held by this guerrilla group was released. It must also be highlighted that the negotiations began with 2 points of the agenda being discussed simultaneously, that of civil participation and the humanitarian actions and gestures which must take place to help construct peace.
Each side from here on out will take other actions and humanitarian missions to create a favorable environment for peace.
Let's get more on this with TRT World's Sandra Gathmann, who has recently returned from covering the FARC peace talks in Colombia. Sandra, good to see you. Let's start with Juan Manuel Santos's negotiations with the National Liberation Army. Who exactly are they? And secondly, why start negotiations with them when they have to go back to the FARC and begin negotiations there?
Well, firstly, I think the Colombian government are seeing these two peace processes hand in hand, because he is trying to end the last guerrilla armed conflict in the Western Hemisphere. So bringing the two to the negotiating table and finalizing both of those would be his ideal and would legitimize his Nobel Peace Prize. And to answer your first question, the ELN aren't as big as the FARC. They aren't considered as big a threat, but they have between 1,500 to 3,000 members, and they're all still very much armed, and until recently had hostages in their possession. So it's important that Juan Manuel Santos pushes the peace negotiations with them. They announced a similar peace plan last March, but the Colombian government suspended those talks because they had hostages in their possession. But until recently, they've released 3 people. One has been handed to the Red Cross in the last couple of days. So there is a level of seriousness with the ELN talks, and that, I think, is fueling hope towards the FARC peace process, which appears a bit fragile at the moment, considering the opposition have put new demands on the table in Havana.
Yes, so I was going to ask you about that, because the former president of Colombia has made a series of proposals for renegotiation. What exactly are those proposals, and is it likely to work?
That's the big question. Those proposals include 5 to 8 years of detention for FARC leaders, not necessarily behind bars, but perhaps in agricultural areas or farms. That's one of the proposals. But Álvaro Uribe also wants to see the FARC leaders abstain from political life. So with the peace agreement that Santos and the FARC leader had signed, they would be able to form a political party, and the commanders, the top chiefs of the FARC, wouldn't spend any time in jail. So those are 2 new demands that are on the table in Havana. Santos has said that, we must keep the momentum going forward. We must have urgency with these new rounds of talks, and that impossible demands can't be put on the table. Whether Uribe's demands are impossible remains to be seen. The FARC have said they won't leave the negotiating table anytime soon.
Okay, Sandra, many thanks for talking us through all that.